Hi there, and before we jump into this week's episode, here's a quick word from Michelle.
Building your career in the energy sector, especially as a woman, can be very challenging, even when you're good at what you do. There are politics and corporate dynamics at play which can be hard to understand. Navigating this alone can be very difficult, and if you've reached a place in your career where you'd like to take control and start shaping events instead of reacting to them, then you might just be a great fit to work with me. If this sounds like you, then you can connect with me wherever you like to hang out online, or email Michelle at michellefraserconsultancy.com, and let's start our journey together. Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week, I am joined by Luca De Lorenzi. Luca has over 18 years' experience in the energy sector and is currently the project director at Subsea 7. Luca, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for the time. Thanks for this amazing opportunity. And I'm 43 years old, Italian. I grew up in the south of Italy and studied in the north and joined the oil and gas sector pretty much after my university, sometimes in 2007, and I started it in London. And since then, I did a bit of a timeline in UK and then moved offshore and several other things that brought me here in Paris today with a family and 2 kids. So that's in a nutshell.
Excellent. So, how did you get started off in the energy sector then?
I was quite an interesting question. My dream was actually becoming a racetrack engineer. After the mechanical engineering, I did a final dissertation in the Maserati racing team, so everybody was quite excited. And I did have one of the mentor there that was actually giving me the opportunity to do there. That didn't really help me to stay within the Formula One and or the racing team, and I was asking him to support. He had so much connection with all the Formula One, but in the end he said, "There's nothing I can do. You just apply for a job. If they call you, that is a good sign." So that's how I started applying for many jobs, and I only got one small job, which I wasn't really happy. And then just after that, I applied for this Eni, which is the Italian National Oil and Gas Company group, and they actually called me. And back at the time, the company was called Saipem, which was part of the Eni group. And I got a call, and they were quite exciting in offering me a place where I could go working offshore on the oil and gas platform in the North Sea, in Asia, in Africa. They were quite good at, let's say, advertising the place. And back at the time, I had this small job, which I wasn't really happy. So I just say straight away, says, yes, tell me what I need to sign, and I'll be on quite soon. So that was my start.
Okay, but that sounds amazing. But going from your dream to be maybe a Formula One engineer working in that type of industry to go into the oil industry, that's a huge change.
It is quite a huge change, it's true, and I still have that a bit of a dream. But what I learned a lot during that period at which I spent over during the final few months of my engineering courses was you need to try to do something that you like and still be curious. And then when I actually applied for so many jobs and nobody actually give me that opportunity, I thought, okay, so it may not be the case. And I just say, okay, let's move on and let's try something else. And then going backward, yes, I still had that dream, but I think that I had an amazing career in the last 10 years that balanced a lot what I left and in reality what I got.
Okay.
You were saying that you found that the energy sector, especially the oil and gas sector, that it was quite exciting. What do you find exciting about it?
Well, it was quite interesting for me because I had I always grew up with a dream of traveling, and my father was always traveling for work and for visiting so many countries. And when he was coming back, he was showing all the pictures of the country he was, and it always gave us that sort of spark in trying for us, me and my brother, to be curious about the places, the world, to be curious to try to go beyond our, let's say, expectations sometimes. And I had that sort of idea. And then when they called me, they just say, okay, you're going to job maybe in London, maybe in Indonesia, in Jakarta. I didn't even know where Indonesia was back at the time. So I knew, but I wasn't really aware of it. I knew about London for sure. But I was quite curious on the fact that, there were many different international opportunities. You could move around and you could go work on an offshore platform. And I had some pictures, and I saw some pictures and say, "Wow, it was quite an interesting idea. So let's try."
Okay. So did you have any role models when you were in the oil industry, when you were during your career?
I joined as a project engineer in London, and I soon realized that I was in the EPCI offshore construction industry back at the time. There were not many EPCI projects as such. But I was basically doing a project in the North Sea, and I had the opportunity to go offshore and I worked for some times offshore, just some trips. And I went back in the office. I said I wanted to go back offshore as a field engineer and to see the site. So that was my, let's say, dream to really touch the site, to be able to go on a pipeline barge, to install pipeline, on a heavy lifting vessel, to install jackets and topside. And during that period, which was the first 3.5 years of my career, which I call it foundation, is where I met a couple of people which they were kind of a role model, as you said. And people were very, very much work passion. And also they were able to transfer the passion to young generation. So one of those is still one of my old mentor, what I call it a second father. And it was the one actually that gave me, let's say, that sense of fulfillment in what I was doing. And also I start loving a lot the offshore because of him and because all the stories he was telling me, because all the adventures he had since 40 years offshore back at the time, which was quite different from today. So I kind of got that sort of mentor, if you wish. And then somebody else in the office, which was more an engineering type a person, but still very passionate about the offshore and what we were going to do every year, how many projects we were actually able to do, and the big challenges and big things that we were able to solve. So that's where I started. And in the end, I still remember those two people today.
Okay. Do you think that it has benefited your career by going on site and working hands-on as an engineer?
I think it was the best choice of my career. And I think if it wasn't for that, what I call it, foundation period, I wouldn't be able to deal with such big things I'm doing today, dealing with so many different type of people, culture and nationality, but any type of culture, I would say, but also any type of background. I was a young engineer and I was given the opportunity to deal with so many steel worker, steel welder, manufacturer, I would call it fitters and welders from Thailand, from Spain, from Philippines, and much older than me. And I had to learn a lot how to deal with these type of people and in a completely different way. Respecting a lot that these people were doing like 2, 3, 4 months away from home, and they were probably 50, 60 years old, and they had that for the entire life. So I kind of grow in that space where I thought I was very privileged compared to them, and I learned a lot from them, and I also learned a lot from working offshore in a kind of shift. So you had your own shift, your own responsibility for your 12 hours, your group, your team, and those were the foundation. I don't believe I could be doing what I'm doing now without that. And I see that many other my peers didn't have the opportunity or were not kind of interested to pursue that sort of experience back at the time. And I think it's probably the best things I've ever done.
Okay, because I think it's important as well for a younger audience to try and get offshore and or to work on site or even do both. I think it's quite a fundamental part of their training, I think. Yeah, I think so. So, what is the most challenging thing about your current role?
My current role.
Yeah.
My current role, it's shaped a bit compared to. It changed a bit compared to the past. Because one of the things that I need to spend quite a lot of time on these days is trying to, as you say, convince the people or try to spark that sort of curiosity within the young generation. And I find it quite frustrating sometimes because they don't. I struggle to find people which they have the same, let's say, interest that our generation had. I mean, I'm not a different generation, but perhaps we were more, let's say, excited on the on going offshore. We were very excited to go on site, to see things, to touch things, and to be able to, to come back with something in the office. So that is one of the challenges we got: find people and trying to transfer this passion, this message, and make sure they actually understand importance and they became more curious. So that is one of the challenge, I would say. I mean, from people managing point of view, it's quite an important challenge, and it changed with time. I remember that I started to deal and manage people when I was pretty young, and I see that is one of the major changes in the last 10 years, I would say.
Okay, but then you were talking about how your career has changed. What has changed in your career and your job?
I was quite lucky, I would always say it, in a way that I had the opportunity to have this foundation. What I call it is the first few 4 years working offshore. I had the opportunity to go back in the office. I was given the opportunity to work in UK. I was offered a job in the same company to move in Houston to work for a project in Venezuela, and then back in UK, and then again back in Paris where I currently am. And I did quite a few things during during the career, and I was quite lucky because I had the opportunity to cover always an higher responsibility job every time, an higher responsibility role. So I never actually did the same thing. Recently, I'm doing the same things, but I see things in a different way because I changed company recently, and I see that also this company is doing things in a different way. And I'm learning a lot on that. And but what I can say is that my kind of role and my way of doing things changed in the last few years, thanks to COVID, which is a bad way, I would say, to say thanks to COVID. It wasn't a pleasure or a great things, but thanks to COVID, I changed a lot, and also changed the way I was dealing with people in the office, and became much more empathic, much more close to people, close to their need, and understand much more what the people wanted. So that's how my role kind of changed in the last few years, if I can say.
Okay, so because your role has changed in the last couple of years, is there anything that you still want to achieve in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a pretty ambitious person, so I would like to grow up in a career and to be able to really, let's say, learn from a different company in the way they do things in a different way, grow up in responsibility, be able to manage a portfolio of projects, and going from one project director to head of projects, and eventually grow up in a VP position or a country role position in the next few years. So that is my task and my goal. Sorry, and but again, that is a one on the career progression. But how I'm going to achieve that, I don't know. What I am trying to do is trying to understand as much as possible how this different company works. Yeah, it's not easy to change a company after 18 years, 17 years. So I move out last summer. So it's nearly 1 year in the new company. And I'm trying to learn a lot how this company works and adapt as well. My style, adapt my way of working to the new company. So that's what I'm trying to do in this current period. And again, another things which I try to do is also, I'm applying for what I call it the mentorship program, an internal mentorship program to mentor young generation or even young project managers to try to give them what I actually got, what I learned. And I think it's one of my personal goals for this year.
Okay. So how are you going to prepare yourself to take on the role for either country manager or CEO?
Why is a good question. First of all, I need to let's say try to leverage my strength, leverage my background, leverage what I can bring to a new company, which is definitely something not easy to put in place. So that is how can I leverage more my strength, my skills, and what I did in the previous company. So that is one thing. The second thing is try to inspire more and more people, because the more support you got around, the more people are happy to work for you, the more, let's say, you gain. Eventually, you need to work with people. So you need to try to have the opportunity to show that you can help them to grow, help them to learn something, and be happy to work for you. So that is something which is going to take time, but I think it's one of the second points. So trying to find the way to let's say be natural, but ensure that when you do things, other people can benefit from it. That case, you can grow, but also you can learn a bit of a what I call it popularity, internal network. So that is the second things, and the third thing is try to be focused on the results. At the end of the day, there is a plenty of opportunity nowadays in the oil and gas industry that it was a bit of quiet in the last few years, but in the next 5 to 10 years, I think there is a plenty of opportunity. So leverage the opportunity, leverage the skills, and try to what sometimes I say, go back to basic, do things very simple. Let's not be complicated. And keep it simple and keep it pragmatic.
That is really wise words, and I really love that answer. But it is really hard, I would think, to become a leader that people want to follow.
Sometimes you need to have it a kind of natural. I mean, at the end of the day, there's people which are more, let's say, inclined to do different things, and I believe I'm a bit lucky as well. And my personality is what it is. I'm trying to be natural, but it's true. I actually managed to get quite a good number of followers, and I kind of inspire people with what I'm doing and what I've done in the past, and always let's say be excited for what I've done. That's I'm trying to sell it, but not selling myself. Rather, as sell what I've achieved, sell what is possible to achieve as a group, and try to stimulate others to do what myself and other group of people managed to do in the last 18 years. That is something that is helped me a lot, trying to be very excited. And so that is quite of a different approach when you talk to someone that is quite excited, and, I try to follow. And it's a kind of being, what I call it, attracting energy. So having energy to give away and attract others people's energy.
Okay. But isn't that hard to do, though?
Well, it's not always. There's always some political things playing around in a big corporation. So one thing is, your goal, your agenda, your skills, your natural skills, your soft skills, and the opportunities, and also the politics. So sometimes, all these corporations have the politics and have some sort of ideas who they want to grow up sometimes. So that is things that I need to learn. I mean, I've been working for an Italian company, state-owned, so I'm pretty familiar with what politics means. But still, it's something that you need to take in consideration that is beyond you. So it's outside your own influence in your control. So there are things which you can control and things you cannot control. So leverage what you can really control and where you can really bring added value, and also be lucky sometimes.
I really like that answer, actually. It's a really good answer. It is a really good answer. Because I do agree as well that you should only focus on the things that you can control. But it is difficult dealing with office politics. Every company has it. I don't believe that no company has it. Every company has it to some sort of extent. What advice would you give our younger audience about how to navigate their career through company politics?
I would say that the politics start to get, let's say, try to start to affect a certain high-level position in the organization. What it would be my advice is that for a younger generation is ignore the politics, ignore what is happening on the top. By the time you arrive, things will be completely different. People change. Start to focus on your foundation. So learn a lot what the business you are. When you grow up, there is also politics is going to play. You're going to learn how politics works, but you have to have a very strong foundation, because there are cases where people will put aside the politics and really take on and consider people which are really, really competent. So politics works, don't get me wrong, but again, the competence is the base. Politics can help more. People without competence can help 2, 3, 4 times more the people with competence. So what I would say is that focus on building your competence. And when you know exactly what you're talking about, people will start to listen. And even if they don't know you, the moment they understand that they are dealing with someone that really, really own a business, really own something, a subject, they really understand what he's talking about, people see the benefit in dealing with those sort of individuals, and they try to work more with them and less with them. They are kind of politically driven, because politics is a policy. It can change and the people can fall very easily. Whereas if you really have very good, solid foundation and competence, you may not be lucky to reach the top position in the company, but if something goes wrong, you will always have a future.
I think so too. I think it's better to work on your competencies and also work on the foundation of your career. But I think it's also important to highlight to people that all your achievements as well.
Yeah, I mean, these, again, you need to try to leverage what you gain every year. And again, another things which is, could be another piece of advice is, which is quite personal, I would say. I mean, I got it, you need to be, okay, let me put it in this way. I did some research and spent some time with a psychologist to try to understand a few things on my life. And at a certain point, he was saying that there are people which they leverage the past and use the past experience in projection, in looking forward, but only taking the positive part of the past. And there are people which they have a tendency to take more the negative part of their history, their past, whilst looking forward. So that is quite an interesting view, because the people that have that tendency to take the positive part tends to be, let's say, less risk adverse. And those that actually tends to look at the negative part of their history in the past tends to be more risk adverse. So in doing business and in any companies this stage, we need to also deal with risk. But risk needs to be managed, needs to be analyzed, needs to be understood. And sometimes you need to be positive, but not completely risk adverse. And at the same time, not could be completely the opposite, be aggressive. So you need to try to be balanced. And that is another important thing which I learned in this new company, which is it comes from the culture. And again, you need to try to show a bit of a competence. And when you have your competence, you leverage your competence, you can leverage the way how you manage risk, which can be industrial risk, can be risk based on relationships, risk based on instability of the business, can be different. But again, that is quite an interesting view, which I learned just like this by talking to a psychologist on something completely different.
Okay. And that is amazing. That's amazing advice as well. Because do you really think that you need to take some sort of risks in your career to progress?
Well, you have. You need to bet on yourself. You need to bet. You need to try to really understand whether it's really an opportunity or not. Sometimes people try to sell an opportunity because of their own agenda. So that is another piece of advice which I learned, and I try to usually give to others. Really try to understand whether it's an opportunity for a company, for the business, or if it's an opportunity because of somebody else has his own agenda and he see that as a benefit to him. But in doing so, you need to try to take a risk. You need to bet on it, and you can take a risk again based on what is your history, what is your past. And if you always had bad let's say luck or bad events, then you're trying to be more risk adverse. But again, try to look at the positive things of your past, leverage them, and you need to take a risk. I mean, nobody that takes a risk will not really make so much progression. That's my view. But again, you need to try to understand how to manage it. And another piece of advice I would say that is it's quite an interesting view is that if you, out of 100 cases, if you will be lucky for 70% of your time, it's statistically proven that you're kind of a living legend. It's very difficult to be right more than 70% of the time in your life. So if you are going to be lucky for, let's say, win for those 70%, you're really going to be a living legend. But you better be ready for the 30% of the time, because things will go wrong. It's statistically proven that things will go wrong. So you have to be ready for the 30% of the time to face the bad, face challenges, face the problem, and benefit, and just see the 70% as a bonus. So that is something it's quite an interesting other point of view, which I kind of shared with all my team and the young generation, and also not just the young generation, but when we look forward towards an operation or a challenging season or a few things that are going to go ahead, will be ahead of us in the next 2 to 3 months. I always say, try to be ready for the 30% of the time. Try to be ready for those moments where we're going to have a problem, because they're there. They're going to be there. And you need to be ready for that, not for the bonus, not for the 70 part, not for the good things. You have to enjoy the good things, but be ready for the rest.
I mean, everybody has ups and downs in their careers. I do believe that, and I've had my fair share as well. But what would your advice for the younger generation and how to navigate when things don't go right? Because that can be really hard.
Yeah, the problem is that, again, is don't focus on what you can really control. Focus on what you can really do for yourself. So things will go wrong, but again, you need to try to focus on what you can influence, where you can learn from any opportunity, for any moment where things go wrong. You're not going to be given the right job. You're not going to be given the right visibility. Things will go wrong because of somebody else, or events which are beyond your control. Try to learn, try to listen, try to focus on what actually went wrong. You need to use that as an opportunity. And don't just try to cry on it and just spend time and be regret on things. Just try to understand what went wrong and try to use that as leverage. That is the most important things. We call it lesson learned, but people usually try not to focus on it because of course, there is emotional. So try to be less emotional, try to be more rational, more cold, and try to analyze what went wrong and how to use it in the future for learning. That's what I would say.
Okay. That's really good advice. So I was going to ask you a question. If you were going to hire someone, a graduate, maybe senior person, what type of skills did you look for when you were interviewing them?
Someone that is not going to try to sell himself too much. That is, I had this. Say I hired few people in my life, not many. I mean, I hired quite a few. I've done quite a few interviews, and tried to see if I have someone that is really honest about himself, and whether it's really it's not going to try to sell itself. Because if someone is going to sell himself too much, things could go wrong. So that is one thing which I was trying to look and try to be careful about. The second thing is ask him which will be his, we call it the weakest point. I mean, weak sometimes is seen as a negative word, but where he really needs to get some support, where we will need to support him. That is another thing. And the other question and the other things that we're trying to look is, what is his own strength? So it's good in networking, he's good in analyzing problem, is he good in deep diving, is looking at strategy. What sort of strength does this person bring on the team? And then we need to leverage that. So really leverage what is on strength, understand in reality where he needs to be supported, at what he needs to delegate, because there will be things where he's not really good at it. Maybe he doesn't really want to learn it. So we can delegate those tasks to others, but we need to understand that. So we need to understand the person and understand if he's honest about himself. And there are people which sometimes they kind of, desperate to find a job, that's trying to say, no, I can do that, I need that. So at the end of the day, it's not going to work. There's plenty of work in these days, plenty of work. So the best things is to try to find the right person, and avoid taking one because of your compassion, because the person is looking for a job, he needs money, and he really needs to be the right person. And it's going to fit 60, 70, 80% in the role. And that 20, 30% is where we need to help him to grow. So we're not going to never get the perfect candidate. It's something impossible.
But do you really think, because that's an interesting point that you made, actually, and I was going to ask you, do you really think that can oversell yourself in an interview and be too confident?
But there are people that try. There are quite a few people that try, because sometimes not because they want to do it, because they are scared to say no, because they are scared to not having the opportunity. Again, don't get me wrong. In this big corporation, you always have people that have been working in different areas or different businesses. So I do quite a lot of internal interviews as well. So sometimes people always thinks about external interviews, but these internal interviews is the same. And again, there is people who wanted to get a job because they were not successful in another internal placement. They were not doing well, and they're desperate to find something, because they actually had a bad, I call it, experience internally. So they know that something went wrong, and maybe they were not successful in the role. So they need to try to sell themselves, and they try to say, I want to do something different. That is something quite interesting. Sometimes people, they come up with these ideas, I want to do something different, because they were not successful for any reason, because they were not good fit, because they were not in a good shape. And they come back with say, no, because I want to do something different. And that's what I thought myself a few times. And up to the time when a guy said, what the hell does it mean you want to do something different? I mean, everybody can come up with this answer, but what does it really mean? And that was quite challenging for me to kind of answer, and I kind of succeed. But of course, it was tough, because I wasn't ready to answer what does it mean doing something different. So that is another interesting thing. So you need to be ready for those people that say, you know what, I want to try to do something different. It's a different role. And there's always something behind that. I want to do something different.
Okay, that's really good advice, actually. I was going to ask you, I ask everybody this. Have you had any career disasters?
So I did one project in my life, which was the worst project I have ever done. And last week I had another interesting view with a client. We were having a meeting and we were kind of introducing ourselves. And I say that was the best project of my life. But then I say it was the worst project that I ever done, but it was the best experience I was ever been given, because I learned so much from that. So that is, let's say, what I call it a career disaster, I would say. So it was a really bad outcome project. But what I learned so much on that, and I really learned what not to do in a project, and in any sense, relation with clients, relation internally, hiring people, planning the job, executing the job. I mean, I learned so much from that. So that is what I call it a career disaster. It's the worst project I've ever done, which it gave me quite a lot. And that I would say it's very strange. But in reality, when I think back 10 years after, this was 10 years ago, I think I still remember as probably the best or the biggest lesson learned I had in my career.
Do you really think that you can learn the most from your disasters that you have in your career?
No. The last project I did in the last 5 years, which was in Mauritania, Senegal, was probably the best project I've ever done. And I always say that I learned a lot from that as well. But again, I learned because I put in place many things happen on the previous one. So it was a very fantastic job. It was a very fantastic outcome. Everyone was really happy. We built a kind of culture where everybody was so happy to work in that project, in the environment. It's very, very, something very, what I call it, unique, that I will struggle to make it happening again. I think it's going to be very difficult. But so I learned a lot from a fantastic job. But if it wasn't because of the first disaster, I would never be able to manage the second one in the same way. I would never be able to achieve what I've achieved without really learning from what I call it a disaster project.
Okay. I think, I agree with that as well.
I want to make sure it's not trying to give a message that you always need to have something bad, but when it's going to happen, try to really learn from it, and because it will play back. And again, I was lucky to be part of that project, and it will come. It will come, but try to see only the upside. Try to see the positive side.
I think so as well, because if you dwell on the negatives that can happen in your career, it's not very healthy. I don't think so either.
No, I mean, it's you start to have regret. You start to think, so what went wrong, and again, try to look forward. I mean, I recently had quite an interesting experience in 2 months after I started this in this new company. And again, then I was having a bit of time because things were a bit slow. So I was thinking, have I done a good choice? I mean, have I taken a good choice or a good decision to leave the previous company? And I was spending a lot, and I got plenty of support from my wife. And ultimately, she said, I mean, you were always complaining, so you've done the right choice. Look forward. And it took me a bit of a while. I mean, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy to change a company. The first few months was super excited, and you got that. I wasn't ready. I knew what was happening, but I wasn't really ready for those, let's say, month 3 and 4 where I was struggling a bit. And again, I was very lucky that my wife was always asking me the same things. So we're discussing a lot every day, and I went, okay, let's move on. So that is another interesting thing. It's not easy to change a company after so many years. There are people that change quite often, people that never change, and people that change maybe 2 to 3 times. And when you stay so many months, so many years, and you had a very good career, and I had really good opportunity to stay, and I actually got a promotion. But I turned down a promotion because I wasn't happy in the way we actually reached that place, and I was really giving much more importance to the way we reached that than the actual promotion itself and the role itself. I was quite upset the way we actually arrive at the moment at the negotiation things, and that's why I left with a bit of a bitter part. I mean, I really left a good opportunity, really good. So let's see how the new one will go. And after 2 to 3 months, things weren't right, and so I had to be ready. I wasn't ready, so I said that you better be ready. But sometimes, I don't always be able to apply that. And lucky enough, I got my wife, which was quite helping me in that part. So another piece of advice for whoever is going to go through a long career, oil and gas industry, but try to get someone who's going to support you, a wife, a friend, a mother, whoever it is going to be. I mean, everyone has his own life, so difficult to say rely on a specific figure, but try to have someone who's going to help you because you will need it. I mean, it's going to be beyond you, so you need somebody who's going to help you. And I think that is another interesting thing which we didn't discuss so far.
I'm going to ask you about something that you were just talking about. You were saying that you actually turned down a promotion. That would be hard to do. How did you even arrive at that decision to even do that? Because normally people just try and grab every opportunity that comes along, but to turn down a promotion, it's quite a huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can try to give you some insights. Basically, I've been working as an expat, so always trying to have an opportunity expat. I mean, I was expat all my life, so I got this opportunity to kind of change and be more like let's say stable, and sign a contract in France where I live, and again, I was looking for something in my company. I knew I was doing well. I knew that really good outcome in my previous job, and I was hoping to get something. But it was not coming. And at a certain point, I said, okay, there isn't much recognition. It's not that I wasn't patient enough, but it's a mix of it. I mean, I wasn't patient enough, but at a certain point, the time was passing. I wanted to have a kind of settlement or settle somewhere, or at least have a better, I have something firm for the family. Because when you reach a moment of career where you got like 2 young kids, then your point of attention are slightly different. Your focus points are slightly different than when you're very young. So you can think much more on yourself when you around young family. You start to be very much more let's say focus on the family and the outcome. So at that point, I was looking for a more stable place. And but even so, I mean, I was always happy to move. I mean, always moving. When I was called a day, and it was quite a unique. I was called a day from my boss, say, the job we were discussing that would have been available next year is actually available now. The guy resigned, so we wanted to promote you. I say, okay, strange things. I was going to give you I was going to resign today because I got another offer, which is quite interesting. I said, no, but don't. Let's park this for now. Let's try to do a understanding what's going to be the condition for this job and whatever. And the way then I was treated, the way I was offered the position, in any company, you know, when you have a promotion and you're really going to do a big step up, because it was a big step up, somebody's going to say, okay, you know, that's a big step up. That's going to be the new condition. Let's get on with it. Instead, it was like me trying to negotiate. And it was, you know, when you're trying to buy something in a souk, in a carpet market, and then I see them trying to be so cheap, and I say, guys, I mean, you're offering me a new position, you promote me, you really believe I'm going to make a big step in the company. So I don't understand why you're so. And again, this is because they were more never actually looking for the reward. So yes, the position was good. But they give it for granted that I was kind of jumping on that opportunity because I was the youngest in that sort of group, given the opportunity to take that on a country regional position, basically being responsible for a region of all the profit and loss, tendering, engineering, operations. So it was quite a big step. But they thought I was going to give more importance to the place, and they thought, okay, they're giving for granted I was going to accept the condition because more of the position. And I said, no, it doesn't work like that. You need to try to show that there is an interest, that they negotiate and add another offer on the table, which I was considering. But of course, after so many years in a promotion, you give much more importance to where you've been there, you know, where you grow, where you learn. But at a certain point, you realize I was kind of not fitting there anymore in the culture, that I kind of, you know, when you go there, you try to negotiate and they make you think you're cheap, you know, and then they trying to sell you the position, but the money, you know, you're young, you can grow, there's no time for the money. And at a certain point you realize, so they're not actually giving it because of rewarding. They have a need, but they're still trying to, you know, to leverage that. And I said, okay, so I'm done, I'm out. And it was very, very, very tough decision, very tough. So turned down a promotion. It was actually somebody else was resigning for a big position. The youngest person was actually not accepting that position. So I said to the HR director of the company, question yourself, not to me and to the guy that resigned, because we both give you a big sign. So you really need to ask yourself, but company will never change. It's a great company, was a great company to grow. And you never know in the future where things will happen. But in that moment, I think it was the right choice. And so difficult decision. And again, when you turn up a promotion and you join a place where it's not really what you would have had, and things are not going in the right, let's say, direction as yet, you still question yourself. But I think, I mean, I definitely have some good opportunity ahead of me. So I need to be patient and enjoy a bit more the time I have, and things will come.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really love that advice as well. So I'm going to maybe wrap things up, and I've got one last question to ask you. And I ask everybody this. If you were going to turn back time, would you change anything?
More personally than professionally.
Well, both, or either or both.
I would say more. I would say it was actually an answer. I would say more personally than professionally. Professionally, I think I was very successful, very lucky, and I kind of leverage all my opportunities. So I don't think I would change anything. I think if I go back, I had some opportunities and things up and down, and I think I made the right choice, right until the decision the moment I decided to exit that company, and we'll see in the future. So not really. Professionally, I think that I've done types of decision. I would say no. In terms of changing things, I think that I'm pretty natural, and not really. I think that I wouldn't change much. I think I'm pretty, let's say, happy with what I've achieved. So, okay, I could have done more, but I think I've done a lot. So I rather look at the positive side rather than what I didn't do. So personally, I think I could do things much better. So that is one of my biggest regrets. Sometimes I say why I'm so successful at work and sometimes a bit less in managing personal things. So it's quite an interesting point of view.
Excellent. And that's amazing advice as well. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Luca for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening and see you next week.